On today's show, going to take a look at the updated NBA draft lottery standings, where the Sixers sit in the lottery odds with just a week left to go in the season. Look at some schedules and teams they are competing with as they currently hold the fifth best lottery odds. Also on today's show, going to take a look into some top NBA draft prospects and some guys down the board as well that have played in the Final Four. Some of these guys, of course, if they're on Florida or Houston, will be playing in the national championship game here tonight. So we're going to look at some guys that might have raised their draft stock with some good performances here over the past couple of weeks in the NCAA tournament. But speaking of the national championship, it is here. Florida, Houston, 2-1 seeds battling it out for the rights to call themselves champions this season. So who you got, Florida or Houston? I'm going with Florida because of Walter Clayton Jr., but you let me know. Type UF for Florida, UH for Houston, and let's get into today's show. You're watching 76ers Now by Chat Sports. I am Jake Chipper. Thank you so much for tuning in, making today's show a part of your day. As I mentioned off the top, going to start by taking a look at the current lottery standings, where the Sixers are right now and where they could end up with about 4 games left to play for every team. So, as of today, Monday, April 7th, before any NBA games are played, the Sixers have the 5th best lottery odds at 23-55. Now, notice where they are right now. They are 2 games behind the New Orleans Pelicans, 21-57, and 2 games ahead of the Brooklyn Nets at 25-53. So realistically, Sixers could end up anywhere between 4 and 6 this week, depending on what happens in these remaining 4 games. So let's take a look at these remaining 4 games for the 76ers. They will kick off their last week of play tonight, Monday night at Miami. Tyler Hero probably not going to play in that game. Heat have some injuries, so we will see. That could be a winnable game, unfortunately, for Philadelphia. Washington, then, they travel there on Wednesday, back home against the Atlanta Hawks on Friday, and then they finish off the awful 2024-2025 season that was against the Chicago Bulls on Sunday. The good thing about the teams the Sixers are playing this week, they play Atlanta, they play Chicago, they play Miami. 3 of their Final 4 opponents, all 3 of them are fighting in that Eastern Conference play-in, 8 through 10, and you don't want to be the team that has to go on the road, win 2 games to get into the playoffs. They're all locked in somewhere in the play-in, so they're all still going to have things to play for as we round out the end of the season. Washington obviously won't. That's a game the Sixers could unfortunately win as well. Now we take a look at the Pelicans. Pelicans, of course, right above the Sixers in those odds. A chance you can still catch them at that number 4 spot. So what does their schedule look like this week? Well, they got the Brooklyn Nets on Tuesday. Going to be a massive game. And we'll talk about this game because, of course, New Orleans right above the Sixers, Brooklyn right below them. Then you got Milwaukee on Thursday, Miami on Friday, and they end the season with OKC. Hopefully that OKC game, they have the 1 seed locked up and they're resting all those guys. Maybe it's a game the Pelicans could sneak out and win there at the end of the year. But this game against the Brooklyn Nets is really going to loom large. And as a Sixers fan, it's tough looking at it because, of course, you want the Brooklyn Nets to win games so that they fall even farther below you in the standings. But you also want the Pelicans to win games so you can try to catch up to them. So what should you be rooting for? The Pelicans to win or the Nets to win? Look, at the end of the day, we can't control it, so just watch and see what happens ultimately. But I think when you take a look here at this Nets schedule, of course, the aforementioned game against the Pelicans on Tuesday, Hawks on Thursday, Minnesota on Friday, New York on Sunday. Atlanta still has something to play for. Minnesota still has something to play for, so that should be 2 losses, I imagine, for the Nets. Knicks probably locked into that 3 seed, last game of the season. Maybe Nets can take that one. So this game against the Pelicans, I would say you probably want the Pelicans to win. Therefore, the Sixers can keep losing and maybe overtake them. So how can the Sixers overtake New Orleans? Well, with 4 games left in the schedule, Sixers have to lose at least 3 of those 4 games this week. Again, that is against Miami, Washington, Atlanta, and Chicago. So lose 3 of those 4, while the Pelicans have to win at least 2 games against the Nets, the Bucks, the Heat, or the Thunder. That would make them tied record-wise in the standings. If they do finish tied, the way the NBA determines tiebreakers in the lottery odds is just a random drawing. So then at that point, you could still end up at 5, but a chance you could end up at 4. Shoot, maybe Pelicans win 3 games, and then all of a sudden, you can overtake them at that spot. When you take a look at the lottery odds based on where the Sixers could end up, right now they're at the 5th best lottery odds. You can see right here, if they stay at the 5th best lottery odds, they have a 64% chance of keeping that top 6 pick. If the pick lands outside the top 6 for Philly, goes to OKC. So you want to, no matter what, stay inside that top 6. Also have about a 10.5% chance at the number 1 overall pick. But if they jump New Orleans, get to number 4, that top 6% rises all the way up to 81. And then a 12.5% chance of getting number 1. Not that much of a difference. But if you fall to 6 and Brooklyn catches you, all of a sudden you're looking at under a 50% chance of keeping the pick. Even though you're at 6, it's still a bigger chance that you actually drop out of the top 6 with a 9% chance of number 1. Really, this whole Sixers season now comes down to this week. Of course, it's not totally in their control whether they keep their pick or not. It's done by the NBA lottery. And I know people have a lot of conspiracies about the NBA lottery being fixed, this and that. At the end of the day, Sixers can only do so much, which at this point is losing games. It'd be a shame if this season came to a close and they do not get a top 6 pick. So hopefully they do not win a couple games down the stretch, fall out of the top 5, and the pick falls even further come NBA draft lottery time. So predict it for me. The Sixers will finish with the blank best lottery odds. Right now they are 5th. If you think you stay there, just say 5th. If you think they rise up, fall down, probably can't get any higher than 4th or any lower than 7th, or excuse me, 6th at this point. So let me know where you think they will finish in the comment section. Gonna get some NBA draft prospects here in just a second. But before we do, today's show is sponsored by our friends at Game Time. Last minute tickets at the lowest price guaranteed. If you're looking to get tickets to a comedy show, a theater event, a sporting event, you should be using the Game Time app. Game Time makes getting tickets even faster and easier. And prices on the Game Time app actually go down the closer it gets to the event. You're looking to go maybe to a Phillies game sometime this season. The Phillies are off to a very, very strong start. I was able to go to a couple baseball games last year down here in Dallas, going to some Rangers games using the Game Time app, because you can be, day of, hour or two before the game, you're like, hey, I want to catch the Phillies. You can go on the Game Time app and have a great deal for you right there on the app. With killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, views from your seats, and their lowest price guarantee, Game Time takes the guesswork out of buying tickets. They have zone deals. You can save even more when you choose a section and let Game Time choose your seats, all-in pricing. Toggling this feature shows a total upfront with no surprise fees at checkout. And with Game Time ticket coverage, your purchase is covered with the most flexible customer service policy in the ticketing industry. You can save up to 60% off buying last-minute tickets for sports, concerts, comedy, theater, and even more. And Game Time Picks makes last-minute ticket buying easier than ever before. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. All you got to do is download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code CHATSPORTS for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem the code CHATSPORTS for $20 off. Download the Game Time app today. Last minute tickets, lowest prices guaranteed. All right. So now we're going to take a look, back half of the show, at some NBA draft prospects that have been making a name for themselves in this tournament. Guys who played in the Final Four. Some might have lost. Some are playing in the championship game tonight. So we're going to take a look at some of these prospects who's been playing well and a couple guys you should be looking out for here tonight in the national championship. Let's start, though, with some of the guys that have lost on this Duke squad, of course, in that amazing, crazy end of game between Duke and Houston, where it looked like Duke was going to be advancing to Cincinnati, and then Houston comes back late and sends Cooper Flagg and Duke home. But despite the loss, Cooper Flagg was phenomenal once again, as he has been all season long. 36 minutes, dropped 27 points, 7 rebounds, 4 assists, 8 of 19 from the field, 3 of 4 from 3. There's no question he's the obvious number 1 pick. He showed it all year, showed it in the tournament. Couldn't ultimately get the job done, but no fault of his own. He did have a chance to win the game, had a pretty decent look, could not knock it down, but this changes nothing for me, and it'll change nothing for anybody, obviously, for Cooper Flagg. As long as he comes out, which I'm sure he will, he'll be the number 1 overall pick. Con Knuppel, also of Duke, played well. Kind of went quiet late in that second half after a strong first half, a guy that I've talked about a few times on this show. So it's encouraging to see in a big game like this against Houston, the best defense that we've seen in a while in college basketball, drop 16 points, 7 rebounds, shooting 5 of 9 from the field and 3 of 5 from 3. But he did have 12 points in that first half, so just 4 points in the second half. Obviously not ideal for a team that collapsed there down the stretch, but as a whole, it was a great season for Con, and I think a solid game as well, showing off some versatility in his skill set there. Kamal Malawach, man. We just talked about Malawach on the show as a potential prospect and pick for the Sixers at 5 or 6 if they do land there. Man, he had an awful game. Picked a bad time to have probably his worst game of the year. Played just 21 minutes in this one because he was in foul trouble, had 4 personal fouls in those 21 minutes. 6 points, 1 block, and standing over 7 feet tall, Kamal Malawach grabbed 0 rebounds. 0 rebounds for your starting 7-foot center. Not a good game. Now, he still had a very great season, so not going to take everything away from him. But not what we like to see for a guy who people were saying could be creeping into that top 5. So we'll have to monitor how his draft stock rises or falls over the next couple of months. One guy whose draft stock is absolutely skyrocketing, Walter Clayton Jr. He has become a true March legend and an NCAA tournament legend with the likes of players, honestly, like Steph Curry. You take a look at what he's done in this March Madness run up to this point, taking Florida now to the national championship game, almost 25 points a game, shooting 50% from the field, and almost 50% from 3 to go along with about 3 rebounds and 2.5 assists a game. At this point, the question around Walter Clayton, how high could he rise? A couple of months ago, even a couple of weeks ago, I could have been sitting up here telling you that Walter Clayton could be a second-round draft target, maybe someone that we picked in the mid to back end of the second round. Now, he's starting to get some first-round buzz. I think if he's there at the start of the second round for the Sixers where they pick, would be a great pickup. But, man, the way he's been playing and showing off just his tremendous skill set, especially his ability to take shots on the move, off the dribble, fading to his left or to his right from the outside, it's truly special. He's been a dominant player, and I think he's going to carry Florida here to a championship here tonight. But it's not just him on this Florida squad. Elijah Martin is a very strong, I think, second-round target in the NBA draft. Former FAU transfer who was with FAU for that Final Four run, transfers to Florida, and he has been as advertised for this Florida squad. This season in the NCAA tournament, over 15 points, shooting 48% from the field, 39% from 3. He's a little bit shorter, about 6'3" is where he stands on that wing, but uber athletic, had a monster dunk in this game, plays super hard, great defense, can shoot the ball. He's the exact kind of connecting piece you want on a contending team, and I think could be a very good selection in the second round with his skill set. Another underrated name on this Florida team, Thomas Hawk, a guy that wasn't really getting much draft buzz all year long, but started to come on late as well. And in March Madness has had some really big games. Florida probably would have lost in the Elite Eight against Texas Tech if it wasn't for his 20-point, 11-rebound outburst, where he also hit 4 of 6 from behind the three-point line. And you know, all the other games has had high rebounding numbers, some high point numbers. He's a younger player, a big forward, standing at about 6'9" on that wing spot, who has the size to be a potential target for the Sixers that can play that 4-5 hybrid, who could go back to school, but if he has another big game here in the national championship, I think could see his draft stock rise to an early second-round prospect. Going to another team here that lost in the Auburn Tigers. Look, Johni Broome was a top 2 player all year in college basketball. Not going to deny that, but given that he's a 5th-year senior now, playing for Auburn, he's a much older prospect. He's, to me, a late second-rounder. Florida really bothered him in that game with their depth, being able to put different guys on him coming off the bench. They really tired him out. And there's no doubt that Broome is a very talented basketball player, right? But given the age and the skill set, not being a great free throw shooter, not being a great 3-point shooter, I'm not sure how well it translates to the NBA. I think, as a late second round pick, he could be a good 10th man if some of these skills do develop. But I'm not super high on Broom, although one of the better players in college basketball the last couple of years and had a very, very good college career. One more guy who you have to absolutely watch out for. And when you're watching the national championship tonight, watch Joseph Tugler on Houston. 6'7", kind of forward center hybrid. But despite the smaller height for a guy who plays that big role, he's a 7'6" wingspan. And he uses that to his advantage. Not a great offensive player, but can finish plays at the rim when he needs to. But with that wingspan, he's got obviously the long arms, he's got huge hands, and he's a great defender. He will come into the NBA immediately and cause havoc on that end of the floor. Somebody who a team like the Sixers could really use a bigger body on that end who can move, he's athletic, and he can defend with the best of them. So Houston has been probably the best defensive team we've seen in quite a while in college basketball, and Joseph Tugler is a big part of that. So watch out for him. He doesn't always have the biggest box score numbers, but he impacts the game at a very, very high level. Now, if Houston does win this game tonight against Florida, Tugler will be a big reason why. Be sure to hit that sub button for the best draft coverage on your Philadelphia 76ers here on YouTube. We are just wrapping up all of our draft coverage as we approach the end of the basketball season. So lock us in, hit that sub button. I promise you won't find anybody else that goes as in-depth on some of these prospects as we will here on the show. We're trying to get to 22,000 subscribers, just 6 subs away from 21,200. So lock us in, hit that sub button, and we'll see you next time here on 76ers Now.